tonight for me, today for my guest is Sam Dyer. Now, if you don't know Sam Dyer, you might not, but I guarantee that anybody that loves gaming, retro gaming, is aware of a company called Bitmap Books. Sam, you're the original founder, key designer, and you gave birth to Bitmap Books. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, it's great to be on the podcast. Thanks for inviting me.
No worries. We sort of pre-podcast, I was sort of trying to get my fanboy out a bit because I think anybody that's picked up one of your books, and I'm just going to lift this one up here. I've got the Game Boy book. It's around 2 to 3 kilos. It's this particular one. It's heavily bound. Mine is a hardcover. It's gorgeous. It's 372 pages, including the index, and every page is a gorgeous color page of everything to do with a particular. Every page is a Game Boy game. It starts with a really great spiel on the Game Boy and accessories. There's a bit of discussion about the collectors I assume you use to kind of capture all the images. But one thing that I'll say is every time I open this book, I own numerous Game Boys with flash carts. I open the book and I look at it, I'm like, oh, I should go play that.
Yeah, that's great.
I can't help but feel that's the intention of what you do. So with that in mind, I would like to maybe see if you could share with us how you sort of started this. Often these are created by people that are like, this isn't what I want to do. I want to do that. And you just gave it a good crack. And 10 years later, 11 years later, here you are. Is that something like the story?
Yeah, sure. So I've always been a gamer since I was, I think it was 9 or 10 years old when I first got a Commodore 64. And it sounds a bit cheesy, but it really was love at first sight. I didn't really know.
I was there with you, mate.
Yeah, I didn't really know what I was doing at that age, but I just loved playing games on it and exploring it, and it was just amazing. And just really started from there. Really, the sort of, I wouldn't say it's an obsession with gaming, but just as my whole childhood massively revolved around first the Commodore 64, and then moving on to like the Commodore Amiga after that, and then a few sort of consoles after that. But yeah, I've always had that love of gaming. I've always been a very artistic person as well. When I was a child, I was always drawing and painting, and I always, because on the Commodore 64, as you'll know, the games loaded. They took quite a long time to load and tape.
You went off and had dinner, and then you came back, and it was good to play.
Yeah, you get these amazing loading screens, and half the time, and obviously some music if you were lucky. But that was these loading screens is one of the things that I was most used to love. Actually, look forward to the loading part because all these coloured pixels all arranged to make an image used to fascinate me. And sort of looking back, I don't know why I never really went into being sort of like a game artist, creating larks. That probably would have been a really good route for me. But I went more the traditional graphic design route, sort of producing logos, branding, and brochures. Right. So I went to art college, took a bit of a break from gaming while I was sort of doing that. I moved to London and had a career in graphic design and branding. In London, working for different agencies there, where I
sort of like selling shampoo to people through catalogs, or I don't know, what kind of stuff were you doing?
That was mainly branding, so that was working with like corporate companies. With like a brief, like they want to change their image, so it would be like a new logo, new brand assets, brochures, exhibitions, everything really.
Is there any big logos out there that people would be aware of, and you're like, yeah, I was kind of in on that?
No, nothing. I wouldn't say anything like massively, massively like household names. More sort of like clients, things that maybe a bit more well known. I mean, I've worked for clients like Vodafone and the BBC, but on more like internal communications for them. So like, I've not been lucky enough to work on something that like everyone would have seen out there. So then I sort of did my graphic design, which I loved, but after a while I just sort of started getting a bit bored with this whole sort of corporate nature of it, and sort of things that I was designing.
Just sort of meeting their briefs and sort of being a little bit railroaded.
Yeah, and just the sort of things like I was designing like brochures and like financial institutions, for example, just wasn't really exciting me. And around about this time, I started getting back into gaming, particularly sort of retro gaming.
Yeah.
And I saw that there was a couple of gaming books out there, and like very early days, sort of like 2012, 2013. And I thought to myself, wow, I didn't believe there's actually like gaming books. Like people are actually like, designing books on this like hobby that I thought was really sort of tiny.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself one day, maybe I could do something like that. And it started really as an evening and weekends thing, just to give me a bit of creative inspiration away from my day job. Just like a bit of fun playing around. I came up with the idea of doing. I decided very early on that I wanted to do something on the Commodore 64 because that was obviously my favourite computer, and came up with the idea of calling it Commodore 64 Visual Compendium, and then just started playing around in InDesign really, coming up with some layouts. And when I sort of had something that I felt that was pretty good, I started looking into how could I produce this book. And at the time, Kickstarter was quite early, and I think there have been some quite high-profile sort of crowdfunding projects, and sort of went down that route with it and started to go onto like Commodore 64 forums and say, hey, I'm producing this book, what do you think? And slowly but surely, sort of started gaining some momentum around it. And at this time, there was no such thing as Bitmap Books, really. It was just something to do that I was particularly passionate about, like a creative project, a side project. And then for Kickstarting, you needed to, I wanted like a separate bank account or something. So I thought, hey, it'd be great if I just created this company, like for a bit of fun. So like the money goes into a separate account, so it's not mixed up with my money. And thought, hey, Bitmap Books was a great name, came out of a logo, and launched this Kickstarter campaign.
Yeah, gorgeous.
I think, it got 900 odd backers, and I was completely blown away by generous people were with their like backing me, even though I was completely unknown. But I think what really helped me was my graphic design background. I understood how to market a book, and obviously like communicate it and how to sell it to people. So I think that really put me in good stead. Crowdfunding, and then really after that, I thought, I've kind of got something here. What do I do with it? And for a few years, it was really just the same. It was carrying on my day job with doing Bitmap Books in the evening and weekends around family life, and that sort of carried on for a few years, and then until it got to a point where it grown. I couldn't sustain it anymore around my job, and I left my full-time job, and then started doing Bitmap Books. But I never wanted to do Bitmap Books full time because it would put too much pressure on having to pay me, for example, which I didn't want, and also I was afraid that it would end up feeling a bit like a job.
Yeah.
For sure. Would I then get bored of it because it feels like it's a job instead of like a treat I do in the evenings?
And potentially despise the entire concept.
Exactly. So that was always my worry. So what happened was I went freelance. I've been like a freelance graphic designer, and then I sort of split my time sort of 50-50. So I do Bitmap Books and freelance. And that worked really, really great for a few years. And then obviously COVID happened. Pretty much all of my freelance work dried up.
Right.
With lockdowns and marketing budget were all sort of put on hold.
I would have thought that'd be a prime time for someone like yourself. Like, I'm sure they would have been selling all sorts of, I don't know, masks and special hats and a whole bunch of companies trying to sell you crap at home.
Yeah, it was more because of the sort of type of work I was doing, like rebranding. I suppose it's kind of seen as a luxury in that sort of sense. It wasn't essential. So marketing, so these companies were sort of putting it on the back burner. Because obviously at that time, at the start of COVID, no one really knew what was going to happen, did they?
Was this you're doing this all digital as far as the when you were creating it? Like you're in the because I mean when I was in high school, which was like late '80s, I did a bit of graphic design work experience for like a week, and that was still we're talking quite a long time before this. But my last experience was like literally on paper doing layouts and stuff. I assume by the time you were doing it, once you got to Bitmap Books, you were using digital, and if so, where were you getting like the assets and all the imagery?
Yeah, so I mean, I was brought up very much on everything on paper. Computers, Apple Macs, when I was at college, were around, but in their sort of infancy. So I was very much brought up on drawing ideas, drawing typography, and then moving on to the computer. And with Bitmap Books, it's kind of the same. I mean, obviously, the whole ethos behind Bitmap Books is my love for print. That's kind of the idea because, although we do PDFs of our books that come with each book for free, it's the physical media, which is the thing that I love. So it's that love of print. But the assets, if it's like a book full of screenshots, then we use like an emulator to play a game.
Yeah, sure.
Take screenshots, play through that. So if I'm like on the N64 book we recently released, for example, we had to play through about 150 N64 games.
Yeah, and you can't just get like the Game Boy one has the cover, and then down the bottom has like about 8 screenshots and varying. You can't just go like start because if you've got 6 different levels of something, you've sort of got to make those shots look like they're different parts of the game.
Exactly. You
got to tease them in.
Yeah. So it wasn't easy. Some games, obviously, as you know, are a lot harder to sort of progress.
Yeah.
Some have got level skips and stuff. So
do you have like a game guy where you're like, dude, I need you to come in and just like smash out 20 hours of screenshots for me?
Yeah, so I work with a guy who's unbelievable. He's got the whole setup at home. And he's an absolute amazing gamer, and he can pretty much get a lot further than I can. I can do a lot of the 8-bit games, but when it comes to anything that needs some serious skill, he's the man to do that.
I just want to kind of go through a bit of a on your webpage you have what's called a bibliography. And I said before, I haven't heard that word in a long time, probably since last time I was in a library. But it sort of lists out. So from 2014 was the Commodore 64 Visual Compendium in a soft cover, and then it kind of moves through a bit more of the Amiga stuff. 2015, and then we're moving into ZX Spectrum. This is obviously not in time with when those existed, but when you started kind of working your way through. And then we're kind of moving into some Super Famicom, and it kind of works through NES, Famicom. The Commodore 64, like every 5th line is you kind of went back for a fresh version, the expanded version or a deluxe version. Then you start landing into like some heavy hitters like the Neo Geo, and then and we get down into Metal Slug and Master System. I mean, you hit all the main bases, but I mean, there's some really interesting stuff in here, like the CRPG, the Guide to Computer Role Playing Games. I mean, are we talking like Zork? Is that where we're starting with this?
Yeah, games like Ultima and Wizardry.
Yeah, right. I mean, they're a genre that is just forgotten because we have so much graphics now, but this is the foundation that all these open world kind of sword and slash kind of games. So I just wanted to sort of highlight that you pretty much have hit on every single King of Fighters Ultimate History, PC Engine, very dear to my heart. Ants to Zombies, 6 decades of video game horror. That's a very specific little dive in there. Hurt Me Plenty, the most recent in 2025, The Ultimate Guide to First-Person Shooters, 2003 to 2010. So I think you have this really fine balance of presenting all the information, but sort of saying, here's a meal. I don't want you to kind of get a bit overloaded. I'm going to break this up because it's such a large genre. That alone, that's a lot of work to know where to stop, to not just jam it all into a 700-page book.
Yeah, and I think what really helps is that I'm essentially my target customer, target audience.
Yeah.
So I kind of think would I want like an 800-page book like that? Absolutely rammed, or would I like to smaller versions that are a bit more sort of manageable? So I think I just sort of take a step back a lot of the time and just think what would I like, what would I buy, and that's kind of my gut instincts kind of worked so far. And obviously I've got people that I work with and I sort of run things past them. But
I think also I don't know. I spent a little bit of time. We have over here still EB Games, Electronic Boutique. It's kind of like the only place in Australia that sells sort of the current stuff, apart from your Targets and Kmart's and other bigger JB Hi-Fi's, whatever. And it doesn't seem to be as much when I wander through. A lot of those sort of like game guides. And it used to be big. It used to be like almost the only, between that and magazines, it used to be the only way you could get past a certain stage. And those books were amazing. And I think that you've really kind of leveraged off the back of the people that probably really love your books are the same sort of people that would have bought those guides, not necessarily because they wanted to get past that particular dragon, I say with inverted commas, but they just loved a book about the things they love.
Yeah. Exactly.
Were you one of those people? Were you sort of into that sort of stuff as well?
Yeah, I was. I mean, in the UK, we had, we also had like hotlines that you could phone if you got on a game, which was always quite funny. In the background, do you know the Dizzy games?
No, I'm not familiar. No,
it's like a little adventure game.
Right.
It's like a little egg called Dizzy.
Yeah, right.
Like sort of bit like an early sort of point and click.
Yeah, right.
Where you'd have to sort of pick things up, use things, and progress and rescue, do sort of tasks and stuff. Yeah, but anyway, back there, they were quite tricky at times, and they had a hotline where you could call and you could get tips. But the joke is that obviously, you wouldn't dare ask your parents, and you'd be in trouble because it probably cost about £5 a minute. And they would help. But no, I don't remember a lot of guides. I remember being incredibly stuck on Monkey Island at one point, and I don't ever remember seeing any sort of guides or anything for that. It was really just a case of you had to just. I mean, like now you just go on the internet, but back then it was like, unbelievable, wasn't it? Just
yeah. It must be a very British curse of Monkey Island, because I don't know anybody in Australia, and I sort of roll with a few, like a fairly varied retro gaming community. I don't know anybody that's ever played it. Some people played it because you can get it onto the what's the emulator, like the RAM or something. There's a certain type of emulator that runs those. A lot of those like LucasArts games. But whenever Scum, that's it, yeah. But whenever I listen to like another podcast or watch something about Monkey, it's always like some British fellas just sort of rambling on about how hard it was and how good it was, and the reward for those kinds of games were just so high, but it was so frustrating. Was that something that was you? Look, I'll just say for everybody that's listening, on your wall to your right hand shoulder is a Commodore 64, nicely perched up on a beautiful stand. So, but obviously the 64 was, you said before, was where it began for you. Do you think that did you move into the Amiga, and was the 64 and the Amiga really like where it all started, and you missed that a bit? Sometimes our games these days can get a little carried away.
Yeah, I think for me it's more a nostalgic thing. I mean, I do. I mean, I have such strong memories of the Commodore 64 because I can almost connect massive things that happened in my childhood, like good things, to the computer. So I always associate to, like, for example, a grandparent. I know what game they bought me for Christmas any year, and I associate that game with that person who's no longer with us.
Yeah.
And it's just so powerful. But I wouldn't ever probably go back and play those games. I don't think they do well. I mean, I think we can but I watch run-throughs on YouTube, and if I ever want to sort of blast some nostalgia, and I've actually got on my wall here. Sorry, you can't see it on an audio podcast. But
that's fine. Oh, Batman!
Some of my favorite ocean games and stuff on my shelf, which I can look at. So it's more about nostalgia for me. But I went from Commodore 64 to the Amiga briefly with the Atari ST in between that. But I got very jealous because all my friends had Amigas, and so I quickly upgraded. Well, sorry, I shouldn't say upgraded. I swapped to Amiga 600.
Yeah, right. I totally identify with you as far as this Commodore 64 because it was the first computer in our family. And I've got two younger brothers, 5 years younger and 10 years younger. So when I was about, 13, my 3-year-old brother, I don't know, my mum bought this Commodore 64 in a box full of stuff at a market somewhere for like $250, which was a lot of money in about 1987. That's probably like how much it cost to register the car for the year, sort of thing. And she's just sort of like, here you go, work it out. And we're like, really? Oh my God. It was like, the Martians had given us technology from the future. And so I was the guy and I worked it out. But I can specifically, you said about linking moments. I can specifically, and we'd have the Commodore 64 on the floor and the tape thing, playing summer games. And my 3-year-old brother, like doing the horse racing or jumping and something, you have to sort of just go left, right, left, right, left, right. And no matter how hard we tried, we could not do it. But my 3-year-old brother would just stare at us like an idiot, giggly, just waggling the stick and just crush us. And that was just such a special moment. This amazing technology bringing us humble folk together around the fireplace with this thing. And it just, there's another game called Whizball that my brother and I used to play. And there's a 2-player thing. It was the first time we could achieve together, and people talk about early days when Pong rocked up and like, hey, you can manipulate your TV. And for us, that was our Atari Pong kind of experience.
Yeah.
We're bang in the middle of, I think, probably Empire Strikes Back, leading into Return of the Jedi, like to be able to interact and be the hero. And I think when I look at your books, that's kind of almost what you're doing, but you're sort of bringing all that. Like so many people must just get this nostalgia, and you've covered so many bases. Like I don't really know anything about the Spectrum, but if I flick through the book, I guarantee all of a sudden I'm like, I think I need to try and find one of them and find a way to play a bunch of the games. And I've no doubt that that's kind of what you do. You just trigger people into just getting into this. One thing I will say about your books though is they're incredibly affordable. If you walk into any bookshop these days, you sort of go, "Oh, okay, that's a lot of money for a book. I'm just going to leave it sitting around." But I'm on the webpage; it's the Australian dollars, and I'm like, that is ridiculous. Like you must really be moving enough to make it worth your time. And 32 books, is that right? You've put out 32, including soft and hard versions of.
Yeah. So there's been quite a few variations of books over the years, like
yeah.
Yeah.
Is there one in particular that you kind of might have pushed you a bit to the edge?
How do you mean, Scott?
Oh, like one book where you're like, it was really hard to kind of either creatively for yourself, it just took a while to sort of to land for you visually, or maybe just production wise, you were just like, for some reason, this is really hard to kind of get over the line.
Yeah, I think one that stands out, it's not massively dramatic, but when I did Go Straight, it took me a long time to be happy with the design of the pictures. I have to remember that particularly. It took me weeks and weeks and weeks of sort of messing around and not being happy to. But then that's just the way design is. Sometimes it takes that long. Sometimes you literally do it in 5 minutes, and you're like, wow, that was easy.
I guess I'm just coming from the perspective of like I find myself drawn towards creative people. I'm not super creative. I'm more of a kind of lift heavy things and I'll be your mate forever kind of guy. And we're definitely in a culture at the moment where, involving a lot of the social media where people just sort of go, in 10 seconds, they can kind of go, and just create something. And you're like, we know it doesn't work like that. And the more we can show people that it's really bloody hard work, and sometimes you'll trip, but the learning from the tripping up is actually what brings the quality out of you in the end if you persevere. So I guess that's just the sort of information I'm trying to get you to share with people that are going to be looking at what you're doing and going, holy cow, a human made this.
Yeah, I mean the books tend to take, from initial concepts, if an author approaches me and says we want to do a book on a certain genre.
Yeah.
Then from that initial idea to then be available to sell to customers can take easily like a minimum of a year.
Yeah, right.
Not like, these books. I think some people think that, producing game books is really easy. But it's, from my experience, it's really not, because there's so much research and thought that goes in. And I think hopefully that comes across in our books that, you can tell they're not knocked out in 5 minutes. They are the care and love that's gone into them. But yeah, it is. It can be very, very challenging. Sometimes we've had issues with production and sorts of stuff over the years. But I've made mistakes as well. But I was quite a firm believer in it's okay to make mistakes, but learn from them and just don't make them again.
Yeah. Have you managed to sort of stay with at least not have to jump around with the actual like companies that do your printing and stuff, so you've got a kind of a consistency there? Because I imagine that's really key to you putting all these hours in, getting your proofs back, and then going, right, we're going to print, I don't know how many you would print of each, maybe 10,000. If you're happy to hand out some numbers to let us know kind of what volume, and then sort of get them back and go, oh my God, this is not the colour that we saw.
Yeah. So I'm naturally a very cautious person, and we don't print 10,000 of the books, not even.
Right. Yeah.
So when I first started the Bitmap, the first couple of books were printed in the UK, which kind of worked because the printing's faster and you maybe have more control. But the issue is price in the UK. We don't really have a book printing industry. We do a lot of brochures and stuff here, but not actual proper case-bound books.
Yeah.
So I looked to start printing in Asia back in 2015. And at the time, I was pretty worried about it because obviously, when you say you're printing in Asia, they think that means like low quality and like poor working conditions for employees and stuff like that. So we spent a long time finding a printer out there that we were happy with, that had a UK office as well. And it was really important to me that they were properly accredited for like working pay and conditions and how they treat their employees. And honestly, it was a game changer for the business because it's so much cheaper to print. It meant that we could do so much more things, and we didn't have to charge double the price for the books.
Yeah.
So it enables us to keep the price nice and, well, not low, but
it's extremely affordable for the quality of the product.
I
would encourage anybody to jump on your website, put in your local currency, and I couldn't take my wife out for dinner for the price it would cost me for one of these beautiful books.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Yeah, it's nice. Yeah, I think I've always tried to keep the price as low as possible.
Yeah.
But the great thing about printing in Asia is, we can do things like slip cases and gatefold pages, especially all the things that really get me excited as a creative person, all these different printing techniques. So it's like, it is a bit of a kid in a sweet shop sometimes.
Yeah. Do they kind of like, so do you go over and visit them and sort of suss out what they're going and look at their product, or is it because they've got that office in the UK you can work directly with them?
Yeah, I've not gone to China before, but because, like you say, because they've got that UK office, I went to look at the quality of their work, and obviously I've got an English-speaking rep that I speak to, every week.
Yeah.
But obviously, if I didn't have that, then I would have gone over there and sort of looked and everything. But
and being cautious, that would have just like put your radar like way up, wondering what am I saying to this guy? What is he saying to me? He's nodding and smoking a cigarette, but does that mean we understand each other, sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I'm quite a cautious person, so we don't print 10,000 copies. I mean, some books we print sort of like 3,000 and sort of start small and then see what the demand is, and then you can always print more. That's kind of the way that I've always wanted to run Bitmap Books, is not get greedy and just keep it nice and sensible and just build slowly so the business stays nice and sort of, healthy, if you like.
Is there one book or, a number of books particular that you've sort of like, they're so hungry, we're going to do a reprint? Like one that just like keeps banging them out?
Yeah, I mean, when I first started Bitmap, I spoke to a guy who founded his own publishing company before, and he sort of passed on a little bit of wisdom to me, and he said, you'll never ever be able to second guess what a book's going to sell. Some sell loads, some don't sell at all. There's no science to it. It's just completely the quirks of publishing.
It's almost reliant on the zeitgeist a bit, like what are people doing with their lives at this time? Yeah,
exactly. There's so many factors in play, and so that kind of stuck with me. And then it's so true. I mean, we did. On one side, I've done books before that I didn't think were going to sell that well. For example, the Neo Geo book was one where I was really cautious because I was like, wow, this is like a niche system within a niche hobby.
Right.
Is there going to be more than 1,000 people that are going to want this book? Well, I couldn't have been further wrong from the truth because, it's still reprinting now.
Yeah.
6 years later, however long it is.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, on our point and click book, the Art of Point and Click Adventure Games, which was a book that was a very self-indulgent book for me. It was one that I almost designed with me in mind.
This is a lot of Dizzy in that book, is there?
There's not Dizzy, no. There's lots of Monkey Island and lots of that sort of mouse PC games and Amiga games.
Yeah.
So I launched that book thinking, oh my God, this is going to be super popular. It's going to be really popular. I was really confident. And the actual initial sales were really low. Well, not really low, but they were lower than I thought.
Yeah.
And they were really disheartening because I was like, what's wrong with it? Don't people like it? And all this sort of thoughts go through your head, being insecure. And actually I was really wrong because once it launched, the sales picked up and it's actually been our second highest selling book.
Wow.
So it started off really slow.
Yeah. And
it's actually been our second highest selling book. But that initial sales sort of slowness could have been so many things, like time of year, time of the month we launched, factors happening in the world, like and all that. It's so many things. So,
there's so much to take into account. I mean, you really are relying on disposable income, which can just fluctuate. And I mean, that's the importance of making them affordable. You must see some interesting responses or some interesting data come back, like geographically. Like you talk about the Neo Geo now, and you would know as well as I do that they're an expensive console, whether it's the AES. If you're going to get like an MVS, it's thousands of dollars now. These days, people are consoleizing AESs and doing a better job of it. But to just own a bit of Neo Geo vicariously, like through your book, like you can still, because we've got an arcade here that runs maybe 12 4 slots in a row. You can go play them, but once you go home, you got no more Neo Geo. So to have your book, and I was sort of wondering, like, the Neo Geo was very much a kind of very popular in Japan. Do you see some books just really hit home hard in particular parts of the world, or are most of your results kind of like just globally, they just either work or they don't?
Yeah, so I think in the early days, that was definitely the case. So, for example, Commodore 64, I would say, did probably the best in the UK and Europe.
Yeah, that would make sense.
In the USA, they had the Commodore 64, but not as much as we did over here. And then the ZX Spectrum book was very much a UK thing. We sold however many million ZX Spectrums in the 80s. It was huge over here, very affordable.
Yeah.
But since then, what I've tried to do is only ever release books that have got more of a global appeal. So I try and avoid systems that are very specific to a certain country or a certain game that would only attract a certain geographic sort of lot of people. So I think, to answer your question, I think it's really now just sort of quite spread out across the globe. I mean, USA has always been a massive audience for us. Australia has always been important as well as obviously like in the UK. So just trying to get really.
Yeah. There's one particular book here, which I can't help but think might be one of your labours of love as well, is that Gremlin in the Works, which is that's sort of like a very thin slice of the pie. You're talking about a very specific company that probably really did market to the UK. Did you feel like I just need to do this because it showed me so much love as a kid? Like, what kind of pushed you down the road to go very specific? Because compared to like the entire Mega Drive, that's a really like you're zooming right in on something there.
Yeah, so I think that's an example of a book we did in the early days when we didn't have like this global audience. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm incredibly proud of that book. I mean, I didn't design it. That's Mark Hardesty designed and created that book, so I can't take any credit for it. But being honest, if he approached us with that book now, we probably wouldn't publish it just because it is very laser focused on the UK and Europe.
Yeah,
but it's all part of our Bitmap story about how we got to where we are today.
Yeah, and that was 2016. But I guess you've been sensible in not overreaching, and you're like, you know what, if we do put this book out, we're pretty sure that most of the people in the UK, where we kind of want to, we're printing at a low number for as best we can, and we're not going to have to ship them too far. So it kind of made sense at the time, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I was just going to sort of mention here, you've got a page here which is all your stockists, and it's everywhere from Australia, Canada, right through Europe. Most key ports in Europe are covered. Obviously, the UK is your biggest, the UK and the USA. I guess for you, like, it's good to have distributors and stockists like that, but you can order straight from you guys. So these days, what's the sort of what gives you the most advantage, and I guess puts back into your coffer to help you? If I go and buy from my local stockist, or if I just, because you do ship to Australia and New Zealand now, which is pretty freaking cool, because a lot of places don't.
Yeah, so there's two ways you can buy from Bitmap Books. If you buy direct from us on our website, we use a lot of special packaging around the books. So as you would have experienced, Scott, we do foam corners.
Yep.
On all books. They're wrapped in tissue paper, custom made book wrap. So this is part of what I wanted to produce, that when you receive one of our books, it becomes an experience, not just a bit of crappy cardboard and it's a bit like hasn't had any thought put into it. It wants to fit special because obviously the work that's gone into the book is special. And you also get a free PDF if you order direct from us as well. The downside is you will pay shipping. So shipping to Australia is going to be quite expensive. It's unavoidable.
Yeah.
Or if you don't really care about a PDF, or you want to take a risk on how the book's packaged, you can order it from a stockist like Amazon or a local game shop in Australia. So in Australia, we work a lot with Pixel Crib.
Yeah.
Who some of your listeners might be aware of. But we don't obviously control how Pixel Crib send out our books. I'm sure they send out absolutely fine, but we don't sort of control that. So there's sort of two different ways of buying. I mean, obviously we would always encourage people to buy direct from us because we can. I think that's the best deal for customers because you get the PDF and you get it. We can guarantee it'll arrive to you in pristine condition.
Yeah, I mean, the way you do get things is interesting, and you kind of look at the way Apple packages their products, and you're sort of a bit like, it's not until you kind of open something you sort of go, what's that weird feeling I'm getting of satisfaction? Like, my wife a few years ago bought this thing. I think it's called a Slate, and it's kind of like, it feels a bit like a Kindle, the surface, and it's specifically for writing, and it feels like paper, and you can scribble crap, and then you can it'll turn it into a document, stuff like that. But she got it, and I think it came from like, it was reasonable. It was about $1,000 for a thing that very specific purpose. She requires it. And I think it came from like Norway or Sweden or something. But opening this package was a bit like some sort of like Scandinavian elves had made it and put it
Yeah.
together. It just, you pulled this little ribbon and this bit came apart, then you open these two flaps, and it was about a 12-step process of revealing, and you sort of took it out and you placed it on the table and you're like, wow, that's pretty incredible. And you're still looking at the packaging. I think it makes a difference when you know someone's given a crap about getting the thing to you. It reinforces the quality of work that they've done, and that they've got pride in it.
Exactly. If you receive a product in the post and it's got a bit of crappy tape and it's just got some cardboard shoved around it, what your first impression of that product is going to be that
first impression,
or that the level of care they put into the packaging is the level of care they put into the product as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned Apple, because that was actually my inspiration for the packaging. Was like when you slide the lid off the box and it just sort of, like you say, it's that satisfaction of it just fits perfectly.
Yeah.
And it feels like everything's been considered. That's kind of my aspiration.
Yeah.
Where I want to. I'm not saying we've achieved that, but it's where
You're saying you are the Apple of computer books.
Well, no, say that, but yeah, I mean you've got to aspire to something, and
you do it.
That experience of receiving an Apple product, I think, is like a special experience.
Yeah. So sort of getting back a little bit to Sam, who isn't working all the time. Do you still get to game much these days? Because you did allude earlier, like I was afraid it would become more of a job.
Yeah.
But it could have gone the other way. You could have, like, with your mate, like I own about a dozen consoles, all of them with either an ODE or a flash cart, and I'll often just take things to some friend's house. These guys are all much better gamers than me, and I'll just sit there with a bourbon and just enjoy watching the game and listening and understanding how they're enjoying the game. So your book's perfect for me, because I'm a terrible gamer. I'd rather see someone else enjoy it. Did you find that you still got to enjoy games, or did it open more up for you?
Yeah, it's probably definitely opened more up. I've definitely tried more games. Started doing the books and found lots of games I didn't even know existed. From that point of view, I struggle with time a little bit. So any gaming I do, I've got, obviously you can't see again, but there's an arcade machine behind me, which is loaded with loads of stuff. So if I get some spare time, I'll go on a few arcade machines, a few arcade games. On that, I've also got like a little handheld emulation thing for playing Game Boy games, which is quite cool. But really, my main, if any gaming, it's really just works around the kids. So my son's got a Switch, so it'll be like Luigi's Mansion or Mario 3D World or FC24. Things. So it tends to revolve around the children. I don't get a lot of spare time for myself to game. I'm not looking after the kids. With my family, I'm doing Bitmap Books, to be honest with you. But I'm so in games every day. I feel like I have my fix. I don't feel like I need to, play them to get my gaming fix.
Was there one particular book that you were that someone, maybe like one of the people you bring in, sort of pitched it, and you're sort of like, I don't know, but let's go to your house and emulate 20 games, and after that you're like, you know what, this is a pretty great console. I missed it, and I'm going to have a go at this.
Yeah, so not exactly the same as that, but the CRPG book was one when I think when it was originally pitched to me by Philippe. I don't think I was massively because I didn't know the genre of game. I was a bit like, I'm not sure. Didn't know if it had the appeal that it would need. And then I went away and looked into some of those games and spoke to a few people, and I was just like, wow, this is huge, and had like a massive respect for all of those sort of computer role-playing games, and then went back to him and we sort of did a deal on the book. So that's definitely an example where my initial reaction was probably no, and then I've looked into it and I've been like, massive yes, and thank God I did, because it's been a massively important book for us.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the books here is H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds Illustrated. Now, most people sort of go, that's not a game. That's a radio show, TV, kind of thing. Like, now it's 3 different movies in a series. That one seems like a little bit sort of off to the left. What's the story behind that one?
It is a bit off the left. So again, this is me being a bit self-indulgent. I've always been a huge fan of the musical of War of the Worlds by Jeff Wayne.
Yeah, like On the Record thing?
Yeah, so the actual musical with the music by Jeff Wayne and the movie. So I've been a massive fan of that. And this is just what I do. I just have ideas in my head. And one day I just thought it would be amazing because there was a big milestone that had happened. And I think it had been 70 years since H.G. Wells had died, which means that his work becomes public domain. So you could the text from The War of the Worlds, his original novel, and you could. The idea was to reprint that text, and then almost you work with an illustrator to bring some of the key scenes within the book alive. Yep. So it almost becomes a bit like a hybrid of a book and a graphic novel. And sort of like a coffee table book. So it sort of did all those 3 jobs. So that's really the story of it. It was just me again thinking I would buy this book and just producing it and enjoying producing it, and then just hoping that other people have that same light.
I mean, there's a similar book here, which is the unofficial Micro Machines collection. Like, that's classic. I mean, there is technically Micro Machines games, so it slides in, but it's obviously, this is not about the Micro Machines game. This is about the Micro Machine toys.
Yeah, again, that was just me one day thinking, wouldn't it be great if there was a book on Micro Machines, and I found a collector and we sort of made it happen. I did at that point started looking at obviously doing non-gaming books, but things that were still like from our childhood, basically like Micro Machines. But I've always found that the non-gaming books have sold a lot less than the gaming stuff. So, I mean, as to prioritise my time, I've had to focus on gaming books now. Yeah.
So you found a collector, and you went and spent a bunch of time with this collector and took all the photographs and stuff of his stuff?
I Googled Micro Machines collector and literally found one and spoke to him, and he, completely by coincidence, he said that he'd been thinking about doing a book and that he had some designs, and by complete coincidence this was, and it all started from there, really. And he didn't have the money to or the knowledge to publish it himself, so a publisher like myself was perfect for him.
He must have been chuffed to see all of his collection, because if we collect anything, it tends to be like, I have a lot of stuff. You can sort of see about a third of my room, and sometimes you sort of sit in here and you're like, I wish I had other children to play with, all my toys and things. So I'm sure he was like just chuffed to see all of his Micro Machines just out there for everybody. Also, people now know what he has, and they're like hitting him up to buy stuff from him, probably. Yeah. Do you have any kind of other collections? I mean, I know you don't have time, but do you squirrel away teaspoons or anything like that?
No, I don't. I just don't have the space for that, Scott. I mean, I've got about 10 Commodore 64 games, which are the ones that I got for Christmas from family members, the ones that are really special to me.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, not the originals, because they were all sold when I got my Amiga, but I really bought them. So I've got them because they're very dear to me. Yeah. But everything else, to be honest with you, my wife just wouldn't. They just haven't got the room.
Yeah.
Because like once you start collecting, it's I started collecting war movies a while ago, and on DVD, and that very quickly became out of control. And before you know, you've got a shelf of DVDs, and it's
well, I'm surprised actually you don't have anything in there of that kind of about movies and stuff like that. I guess it's a bit difficult because you got to be careful where you tread. And these days, collecting things like DVDs, like, I don't know, they're probably like £2 or £3, a box, at the local sort of boot sales. So it's very easy to go, oh, I'll just grab that. Before you know it, your wife's like, you have 60 too many, stop.
Well, that's what happens, yeah. And then you've got too many DVDs to ever watch. So
yeah, that's right. I guess we might be getting towards the end of your time, and I really appreciate it. But I was wondering, if you might be able to offer. I know how long's a piece of string, but some guidance towards people that it doesn't necessarily have to be a book, but just I guess products, and especially for people that are creative and they sort of go, I've got this idea, but the reality of making that a thing and sort of marketing it. And I know this could be like a 3-week seminar, but I guess some sort of nuggets on how to get people to sort of go, you know what, you might be like, just narrow it down, or just accept feedback, or maybe that's a terrible idea and you need to accept it, sort of thing.
Yeah, I think, I'll try and answer. I can only really...
I know it's a broad question, but there might be a couple of things you like. The best bit of advice I ever got was blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, so I think I can sort of relate to how I did it, which seemed to work. Obviously with the internet nowadays, you've got, ready-made feedback from people there.
Not always positive.
Not always positive, but yeah, I think you have to be able to accept not positive feedback.
That's feedback. Yep.
I've had plenty over the years, and obviously if someone's just been an idiot, just constructive feedback, I think you have to take that on board.
Yeah.
And probably very quickly realise that you can't. One of the things I struggled with personally was trying to please everyone, because that's kind of my personality, is that I want to make everyone happy. Yeah. When you've got 900 people who bought a book, not every single one of those people is going to be happy, because someone's going to be wanting their favourite game in the book. It's not in there, so they're upset. Some people don't like the font, some people don't like the size of the image, some people don't like the size of the book, some people don't like the colour you've used, some people don't like... the list goes on, but you can't please everyone. So what you need to do is just try and do the best you can, and just try and do what you think's right, and listen to feedback. I would say that if you've got an idea, and just be brave and do it. If you're a designer, or you can use any design software, or you've got someone try and get that idea down on paper, and try and create at least just a few example spreads. So I'm just talking about books specifically here, or a cover, and then try and get some feedback on that idea online, and then just keep sort of developing it, and don't get disheartened, and go back to the drawing board if it's not quite working, and improving. And put it that way. It's quite a hard question to ask. I think I would just say, one of the things that got me to where I am is bloody hard work, and I think I made a lot of sacrifices in my family life, which I'm not particularly proud of, because I am proud of Bitmap Books, but there's been a lot of periods of my life when my children were quite young where I've worked sort of like 60-hour weeks, when I should have been spending time with my family, but obviously I made that sacrifice because I wanted to try and create something. And I suppose be prepared for lots of hard work, and because I think that at the end of the day that will show in what you're trying to create if you put a lot of time into it. And on the opposite side, there's been a few products in the retro community over the years where you can tell that the person has put sort of zero effort into it, and it's been not really successful. And I think people can spot that a mile off, because like you said earlier, Scott, people have only got a certain amount of disposable income, and back 10 years ago, people would probably buy everything because there wasn't much stuff around. But now there's so many things for us to spend our money on, retro-wise. So, people are going to be super picky. So you've got to stand out, I think.
I think that's all really good advice. I think sort of touching on the, the sacrifices you made, these 60-hour weeks now, there's a sort of an interesting, what society calls successful. Now, the bloke with the nice shirt, the Ralph Lauren, stepping out of an Audi Quattro, he's a banker. He has an image of success, but he's potentially really bloody miserable. And he's probably still working 50 odd hours, and he's having conversations with other twats that he's like, I'd rather not be here, but this is where I am. To put that time and effort and energy and sacrifice into something that you love, and in the end gives you so much more true success because you're the master of your own domain, you're allowing yourself to be creative, and in the end, you'll get back to your family. And I think a lot of people are, like you said, be brave. They're afraid to kind of go, well, I could go over here and do this. And you hear a lot of people are so happy because they kind of ground away. And then, when you know what, I'm going to take a step to the right. I'm going to be brave. It's still going to be hard work, and just accept it's going to be hard work. And then in the end, they're doing what they want. It's always going to be hard work. You know, I've worked with a couple of younger people, and 23, 24 or whatever, and I'm 50, and I'm like, dude, doesn't matter what you do, there's going to be hard work involved. So you might as well bugger off to somewhere where you're going to enjoy it and do hard work there instead of being stuck in this crap hole, you know. So, yeah, it's definitely good advice, mate. Be brave and be kind to your family because they can be like the only thing that keeps you going sometimes.
Well, exactly, yeah, I know, 100%. And I just think that, like you say, if you are going to sacrifice, family time and stuff, you've got to do it for something which is worth sacrificing for.
Yeah.
Rather than working for something, anyway. But
yeah, I know
it's all worth it.
All right, Sam. Look, I think I've probably taken up enough of your time. I can't really kind of go on much more about all the books. They're gorgeous. They're affordable. They really are easy to get hold of. So I would encourage anybody to I'll put some links in the show notes to the website, and then from the website, they can go, you've got a really good sort of bar up the top that shows about who you are, all the catalogue, shipping, and how they can get in touch if they have any other queries. But there's no reason why a person couldn't get hold of a copy of your book somewhere between London and Australia and Washington kind of thing. Like, you've got a world domination going on there, that's for sure. And look, I just really appreciate your time and your wisdom. And it's hard to get people to be honest about how hard the work is, because some people kind of want to sit back and go, oh, I crushed it. Look how good it is. And like, we all know it's hard work. We do.
Yeah. I think it is hard work, Scott. But I think if the hard work, putting the hard work in at the start, then you get the benefits at the end. I think that's kind of it feels like at the moment.
Yeah. It's a bit like you grow a garden. Like you said, you sort of, some of these books, they kind of like you planted them, and then you're like, oh no, why aren't these sunflowers coming out? And then like 6 months later, boom, there's just all these sunflowers. You're like, oh my God, I just need something else to happen, you know?
Like, people have said to me in the past, why don't you like employ a graphic designer or employ, people to manage your, the shipping or, all this sort of thing. And I've always been completely against that, because one thing that keeps me not stressed is that the costs in the business have kept. I haven't been greedy. I haven't tried to grow like the company and make it into this really big money making machine. Because what I never wanted is having employees and then the pressure that comes with that. So like
them relying on you and
exactly. But like, if a book doesn't sell very well, at the moment, it's not like the end of the world. But I had like lots of staff and a big fancy office, which I haven't got, and I'd be like really anxious and stressed. That, oh my God, what's going to happen because this book isn't selling. And I think that's the main thing that would really stop me from enjoying Bitmap Books. So I think it's keeping it small, keeping it sensible, not releasing too many books, and just keeping it nice and small and manageable, and keeping it fun. That's the main thing. It's just keeping it fun, because
so it really is just you. It really is just you, and then you just sort of bring a few people in and out based on sort of what you need to achieve on a particular sort of goal.
Yeah, so I do all the design for, unless I work with an author who's a graphic designer. I do all the design. I pretty much do everything. I work with a guy called Greg, who does our social media, who deserves to be mentioned because he does a fantastic job of all our socials. He's a great sounding board as well. We sort of speak once a month about various things, and he's very close to the business. But apart from that, it's just pulling in writers, copywriters, artists, as and when we need people, which is great because it means there's no like ongoing cost of staff. And it also means that you get to work with different people. So if I've got a book that needs this type of artist, then I can chop and change and use different people. So it does work really, really, really well. And also the great thing about it just being me is that, I can do what I like, really. I don't have to answer to, bosses, which I did for sort of 20 years when I was working. 10 years or whatever, however long I was working as graphic designer, 10, 15 years.
And that's the reward, like we were saying before. You're making sacrifices. You're experiencing the anxiety of getting things out there and selling and stuff, but the reward is I only have to think about me, and I win every time because, like you say, each book that doesn't quite make it, you're like, oh, well, I'll do this. And you have, I think the most important lesson you've accepted, and you said you can't please everybody. And
no, you never can.
That is key to, we're in a society at the moment where we kind of, you should be like, everybody should pat each other on the back. It's like, if you don't like something, if I go to a restaurant and it's terrible food and the chef says, how was it? I'll say, mate, I'll be honest, your place is nice, but this didn't work for me, and please don't be offended. And a good chef will be like, come back next Wednesday, I'll make it better.
Yeah, see, that's probably, that's the Australian in you.
Is it?
In Britain, if that happens, then the British thing to do is say, yes, it was a lovely meal, thank you. And then you get outside. You get outside and say, oh, that was bloody horrible, I'm not coming here again.
And look, we probably do that too. I guess I'm just a bit old-fashioned. I spent time in hospitality. I know chefs that, like, they wouldn't like it, but they would much rather know because they want to know, it's all about repeat customers. So I guess for you, it's like, you're like, I would be really interested in knowing how many of your customers have multiple books, or like who has the most books. Like, it's almost a bit of I'd be so curious. I'm sure a lot of them just have like one book each, and that's enough to sort of keep you going. But there must be someone that's just mad. At this price, I could probably afford 10 of them and just put them out there. And I would get into like kind of like decision lock because I open one and go, I'm going to play that, and I open like, oh my god, now I don't know what to play. I'm just going to have to close these books and just go straight to bed.
Yeah, we definitely do have some people who collect all of our books.
That's
which
great.
I'm really grateful for. And then, like, there are some people who maybe just collect the ones that they're particularly interested in. So they might have a collection of 6 or 7, and then you have people who just sort of have one as well. So it really is such a spread. There's no way you can ever sort of like cater for one person. That's kind of like one sort of bit of not advice, but like a bit of wisdom, I suppose, is that just you can never sort of second guess or anything like that in this game, doing this sort of thing. It's
and being creative, it must be a challenge because you have a creative desire, but you still have to be realistic about the target audience and sort of go, they might just miss that. You could spend hours squirreling away at detail and sort of go, look, maybe a few people will notice that. I'll notice it, but I'm going to throw it in there.
Yeah, this is the worst thing about being a creative person, being a graphic designer, because when the proofs come back, I suppose what you need to understand is the amount of time that goes into getting to a book being printed. It's like a massive undertaking, and like being quite frank, by the time it goes to print, you're actually a bit sick of the book, which is a bit of a thing because nobody's seen the book yet. So obviously you're excited from that point of view, but you've looked at there's only so many times you can flick through a book, and by the end you're just like a bit like, please no more. But when I see when I see the proofs back, I'm like, oh my god, I spot something like a tiny little thing that no one is ever going to care about, but I obsess about stuff like that, and then that'll frustrate me, and I'll get annoyed, and I'm like, oh god, that's so annoying, and it's hard to just sort of take a step back and just say, do you know what, it's actually really nice, don't worry. But if you're close to something and so passionate about it, it's hard to not take it so personally and all that sort of things. That's always a bit tricky.
That's good. That's a human response to a very complex emotional situation. I think a lot of people need to hear that. Because sometimes you need to learn to fight your battles, because you can't win them all, unfortunately.
No, exactly.
All right, Sam, mate. I do appreciate it. You've gone on enough. I'm going to put some links to the webpage and the socials that I can find, and I can't possibly think that most people listening to this aren't going to at least go and have a look. And if you have a look, then you're mad if you can't go find one somewhere. So, Sam, it's Thursday there. Have a great day. I appreciate your time, and I will keep buying your books, and I will keep looking at your socials and keep telling people you got to have one.
Thanks, Scott. I really appreciate that. Thank you ever so much for having me on. It was great fun.
Great time. Thank you, mate.
Cheers.